8 o'clock on a Thursday morning. Could we bring the energy down? No, we can't. Like, this is just like I have one speed. It feels like somebody said yesterday, like I had just drank a whole bunch of Red Bull and I'm just giving it all to you. So that's where we're at. Like, that's where we're at.
And you're always that way. It takes no chemicals.
Well, coffee. It just takes coffee. Yeah, it just takes coffee. Anybody else feel like without the coffee, like I am literally useless to the world?
God created water so we can make coffee. That's the only reason we have water is to make coffee.
That's fantastic. How many of you were in some of our sessions yesterday? All right, and how many of you came back for Bob's and were really sorry about that after? Okay. Oh, there was a few hands. I appreciate that. I appreciate the honesty.
That hurts us a little bit.
Fantastic. All right. Fantastic. You know, we are so excited to do this program for you today for a few different reasons. Number one, the dealership of the future is something that is happening, and it's something we've got to be thinking ahead on in regards to what we're doing as dealership owners and managers. That's one reason we're excited about this. Number two is that we love doing programs together. About a year ago,
My wife doesn't like us doing programs together.
she does not like us doing programs together because the SaaS level escalates really, really quickly, and we typically get notes from my mother after the fact about jokes that she didn't think were appropriate, but we thought they were a good time. We thought they were fantastic. And so we started doing webinars together about a year ago, and we have just had a blast. And so as we were working on programming for this show this year, we said, you know what would be really fun for us to do a program together and my mother not be here. So you guys she's probably watching the live stream kind of. All right, so but we're excited to do this because the SaaS level that you're going to get with us is just going to be next level. Again, how many of you are working with a parent or a child in the business? Let's see. Okay, you get it, right? Like you just got this level of camaraderie and SaaS that happens when you are with that. Fantastic. All right, so we're really excited about this. And the other thing that we're excited about is what we're going to do this morning is just bring you into some of the conversations that we are having in our office every single day about, we sit around after work is done in Bob's office and we just say, okay, what's happening? What are we seeing going on in service of the future? What are we seeing going on in parts of the future? These are the things that we're thinking about all of the time, having conversations about and seeing things that manufacturers are doing. And we're excited to bring you into some of those conversations that we've been having over the last few years and give you some applicable things you can take away and start moving your dealership in that direction.
Yeah, I think again, like Sarah said, we're always, part of our objective is to help dealers be successful. I mean, that's our vision for our company. That's everything we do is for that. And I always feel like, I've been doing this for a lot of years, and I always feel like, part of my obligation is to not be seeing what's going on today, but say, look, dealers are going to be here 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. I want all the dealers that I work with.
You may not, but it's
It doesn't matter if I'll be dead and gone, and I won't care that. It won't matter. But part of my goal is to say, okay, I don't want the dealers that I work with to be caught behind the lines. I want my dealers to be out in front, being the leaders and stuff like this, because, as I said yesterday, we're in business to be profitable, and you have to constantly be innovating and changing, and that's part of what we are looking for all the time. Sarah works primarily with manufacturers. And so she's seen, and she works with a lot of different manufacturers in the industry, and she's seen what they're looking at, and so she's bringing that back to Jeff and I. Jeff and I you were watching one of our dealer success groups, again, this was on doing trends and budgeting projections. We just did this last month. And so Jeff and I are talking to dealers, and we have dealers that handle all different kinds of products, construction equipment, tractors, and things like this. And so as we're talking to dealers, either in the dealer success groups like you saw there, or just one-on-one, which Jeff and I spend a lot of time doing, they're saying, hey Bob, I just saw this, or hey Jeff, have you heard about this, or how do you think that's going to impact it? So like Sarah said, we'll get together on a periodic basis in my office and just kind of debrief. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you thinking out there? And then we sit around and say, okay, well, how would that impact our dealers? What could we do? How could we leverage that, knowing that there's a tech issue out there, and what technology is going to be available to help us solve that? And there is one that's going to be able to have a low-end tech become a high-end tech overnight. And so we're looking at those things like this. And so as we were talking about this program, as we were setting up for this year for the program, I told Sarah, I said, it'd be a lot of fun for us just to kind of debrief on this is what we see. This is how we see employees changing. This is how we see customers changing. This is how we see shops changing, parts department changing, sales departments changing. So that's really what we're going to do this morning is debrief. I'd love to have you guys interact with us as some part of it. You say, gosh, Bob, have you thought about this? Because this is really just kind of And we don't, it's a crystal ball kind of thing, but we're guessing.
It's more of a magic 8 ball. Okay, that's more of where we're at. Magic 8 ball, not a crystal ball.
Yes, make the decision to go for it. So anyway, so that's what we want to do. We want to just kind of spend this morning and say, this is what we see. This is what we see from a customer perspective, an employee perspective, service, parts, sales. These are the things that we see happening out there. And then as you're walking around the floor, be looking for things that you're seeing, where you're walking by things and going like, oh, that's pretty cool. And because if manufacturers are doing it, they're also looking at the future. They're not looking at today or tomorrow. They're sitting there saying, okay, 5 years from now or 10 years from now, this is the cool stuff that we think is going to be out there. And a couple, they won't be right on all of it, but it's the future. We're not always going to be right, but at least we have to be looking for it.
Yeah.
So let's start off.
Well, the first thing that we know is that dealerships are going through change at a pace they've never seen before. How many of you feel like you have been in the wind tunnel of change over the last 3 years in your dealership? All right. If we even take a step back and we go, okay, when we look at the changes that we've gone through, we look at the changes from February of 2020 is very different than what March of 2020 was for you. Would you agree? We're like, holy smokes, how do we deal with this change? You went from this place of saying, are we essential? Are we not essential? How many had to navigate that change really, really quickly on so many levels? Then you said, okay, am I going to get COVID from a cardboard box? Do you remember those moments? You were like, okay, what do I need to do? Do I need to spray down my cardboard boxes? What's the...
And the UPS driver.
And the UPS driver. Coming in through, let's go. Let's go.
If you could get disinfectant.
That's right. And how many of you had to make your own cleaning supplies? Did anybody go down that path for a while? There was all of these changes so rapidly in a really short period of time. And that doesn't even include saying, okay, one of my employees has a runny nose. Does that mean that they have the COVID situation up in here? It was like, oh my gosh, you didn't know what to do. We had so many changes happening so quickly. But that's just one of the many pieces of changes that you've had. Would you agree? We've made these changes on hiring and finding employees because what from overnight felt like, okay, maybe we had some options. We went to having no options overnight. Anybody struggled with that? You're like, yes, sir, we were in your session yesterday and we're still struggling with that. All right, let's go. Need a magic wand for that. That's what I need. How many of you went through any of the changes with actually inventory issues? Anybody have changes in inventory issues over the last years? If you didn't, we would all like your secrets and we'll be talking to you afterwards, okay? That was a huge change that we had to figure out how to navigate really, really quickly. The amount of change that has happened over the last 3 years specifically have been lightning speed. I think for some of us it may feel like we have been on this roller coaster ride from hell that we couldn't get off of. And you said, I wish I would have taken the chicken exit. Anybody wish they would have taken the chicken exit in the last 3 years? How many of you say, you know what, Sarah, I didn't want to take the chicken exit, but I was real excited because there's an opportunity that I never thought was possible. Change produces opportunity for us. Anytime we have change in front of us, we're able to really grasp it and move it towards opportunity. But it does feel like change has been this roller coaster ride over the last few years. Last year, I made one of the biggest mistakes of my entire life. Right? One of the biggest mistakes. One of my greatest joys in life is being an aunt. Okay, that's one of my greatest joys. My brother has 3 children, and with these children, I love nothing more than to spoil the heck out of them. Anybody else have nieces and nephews that you're like, this is my greatest joy? So as an aunt, I really try to go above and beyond and buy them the most obnoxious gifts I can get that don't have batteries. Come talk to me afterwards if you'd like some tips and tricks on that. And I also like to take them obnoxious places their parents would never take them. Okay? Yeah, okay, all the aunts and uncles are like, yes, Sarah, I see you. All right, so last year I got my nieces a pass for our local amusement park in Kansas City, and I took them there a few times over the course of the year, and it was fantastic. But here's the deal. I took them right before Halloween, and they had this time called Haunt Night. I didn't know what Haunt Night was. I thought maybe there were going to be some pumpkins out. No, there were not pumpkins. There were giant people in monkey costumes walking around with tambourines, smashing them over children's heads. And so I took my nieces to this amusement park, and they said, when we got there, they said, Sarah, I want to go back to the roller coaster rides. We love roller coasters. I want to go back to the roller coaster rides. Let's go. But it turned dark, and all of a sudden, these monkeys came out with giant tambourines. There were tears from all of us. And we were moving, they said, Aunt Sarah, I want to not be on the roller coaster anymore. I want to go to the carousel. Why is it that they wanted to move from the roller coaster to the carousel? It's safe, and it's always where? By the exit of the park. Right? It's always by the exit of the park. It's the last thing you do before you leave that have been on this roller coaster ride, and it is haunt night at the amusement park. Where we need to be going as owners and managers with our dealership is towards the carousel. You know what? You can choose different angles to ride on the carousel, but for you, you can have a little bit of a different view, but we're still going in this positive direction towards profitability. And so as we go through this, I want you to ask the question, how do I implement these changes and not be on the roller coaster ride from hell, but be on the carousel where we can adjust the speed if we want to go a little faster and we can change the animal we're riding on? Because in the midst of this change, that's how we're profitable. So Bob, let's talk about the different generations that are changing right now inside of the dealership.
Yeah, so as we think about our customers, which is where we see a big change happening right now, you have the boomers, which I'm one of. How many of you here are boomers?
Okay, boomer.
Okay, we're the ones that basically created everything that's cool. You're aware of that, right? So we hated the man, right? You grew up in the 60s, right? I tell people, if you participated in the 60s, right, you don't remember the 60s. For the most part. So that's the boomer generation. And so this was the largest generation in the history of the world, the boomers were. And they came out of the World War II era to go through that. And right now, the boomers are still the largest group of people out there buying today. They control 75% of all the wealth in the world is controlled by boomers. So I want you to think about that. So 75% of all the wealth in the world is controlled by people like me. That should scare you.
Scares me.
But that's the boomers, okay? And so they're a customer, and they buy in a very kind of interesting way as they go through and do it. The generation before them was called the silent generation, but the boomers are really ones there. Then we got the Generation X. Okay, so these were the children of the silent generation that they talked about. And so Generation X is a very different generation than the boomers. They didn't have as much money, and they still today don't have, from a total capital standpoint, as much money as what the boomers had with it. And the interesting thing about the Generation X, who's Generation X here? Okay, so Generation X, you're the ones that actually created technology. Are you aware of that? So you're the ones that really created the technology. You go back and you think about computers and things like this. Technology came out of Generation X. And so Generation X created that. They're very comfortable with it. So they were really the first people to be very comfortable with technology. But they didn't have as much money as the boomers. And so when they were using technology, what were they using technology to do? Find ways to save what? Money, okay? All right, that's just how it was, you know. And so as you think about it, again, when you have people that are Generation X people, box stores became a big thing, okay? So you think about your Home Depots and your Lowe's and things like this. That was really an evolution that came out of the Generation X group, because they bought a lot of their products from these bigger stores, because bigger stores gave you the opportunity to save what? Save money, where you had the boomer generation that was more going to smaller stores, one of the relationships and things like this. Generation X didn't care that much about the relationship. It wasn't as important to them in the buying experience. And so that's how they evolved into that. And again, they're out there, but it's still from a money standpoint, a smaller group than even what the boomers are today. Now, the boomers are getting out of it, right? They're moving on. But as the boomers retire or pass on to a better life, as they pass on, where does their money go? Where will my money go when I'm done?
Me. Isn't that fantastic?
Not to the Gen X, right? I hate them because they created technology, right? It's going to go to the millennials or Generation Y. Okay, so the boomers produced the millennials as a part of it. Silent generation produced the Gen X people. Okay, so as I pass on and my wealth passes on, all the money that the boomers have is going to go where? Here. They didn't work for it. It was just given to them, right? No energy, no effort. That's just how it is, Marina, right? But it's going to pass over there. So, and the cool thing was the boomers was the largest group of people born in the world from a generation until Generation Y or the millennials came in. They surpassed, in terms of total numbers, they are a bigger group than what the boomers were. And the interesting thing about the millennials is everybody hates the millennials. And I was laughing. He was like, millennials. I said, you know, every group of people have lazy people in it. Would you all agree? Okay. And I tell people, millennials, my whole team is millennials. I don't have anybody on my team. But my wife and I are both boomers. But everybody else on my team, hardest working people, committed to doing whatever. So I always tell people talk about millennials, you're stereotyping. Every group has lazy, stupid people in it. And so millennials, I think, are really disparaged a lot. But millennials are going to be, they buy very similar to the boomers. a little differently, but millennials like relationships. They do like to deal with smaller businesses and things like this. And so as the Gen X people are fading out a little bit, the millennials are coming in, and so you're starting to see this, but they buy in different ways. A little bit different than the boomer, but they have a lot of the characteristics of the boomer. Then we have the Z generation, and that's not so much from a buying standpoint for you guys. Sarah's going to talk about them as we talk about employees. But this is a very different interest. The Z generation is the younger people now that they're here with their phone all the time, right? And so we're talking about that a little bit. But I want you to understand that small businesses are small profitable businesses because in the past they've catered to the boomers, okay? And they want the relationship and things like this. And do boomers really care about the money? No, because they've got what? They've got the money. They buy what they want to buy. I was at a store here not too long ago, and a person said, well, this is going to be a little bit more expensive. And he kept telling me that, and it irritated me, right? And he says, and I said, look, I don't care about the money anymore. This is what I want, right? I want quality. Okay, so stop telling me that this is going to be a little bit more expensive. I didn't come in here to save money. If I wanted to save money, I wouldn't have walked in your store. Okay, all right. But it was irritating to me because it's not about the money anymore. What my life is anymore, it's about time. I have money, I have less time. And so what I'm looking for as a boomer is for you to sell me things that save me what? Time. I got the money, and I don't mind paying for it. Just give me things, show me things that will save me time. We were talking the other day with a group, and my wife and I, we bought a bunch of new appliances and stuff here a while back, and I bought warranties on all of them. And somebody said, why would you buy a warranty on a refrigerator? Why would you buy a warranty on this? And I said, because when I'm out traveling, and my wife calls me up and she says, Bob, the refrigerator stopped working. I'm a week away from getting back home. Okay, I want her to have the 800 number to the guy that can fix her refrigerator if it ever goes down. But for a couple $100, I didn't care. It doesn't matter to me because it's not about the what? Money. It's about the time. That's why I tell dealers, why don't you sell extended warranties to people like me? I will buy them. I'll pay 10% of the retail price on a piece of equipment to get an extended warranty on it because it's not about the what? It's about the... Guess who else will buy extended warranties? Okay, I tell you, a lot of people say, well, I would never buy an extended warranty. Well, it's not your money. Okay? Sell them what they want. Give them what they want. But that's really where we're seeing a big transition from the customer standpoint, and it's really moving over to the millennials, and they're going to be your big customers of the future. Cool thing is that they love working with small businesses.
Well, and I think that's it. As we look at these generational changes and what's going on between this transition of wealth between the boomers and the millennials, and even Gen X in the midst of this, I think the thing that we have to keep in mind is that both of these sides, both the boomers, the millennials, and even Gen X, as we're looking at this, prefer to shop small if they can.
If they can.
If they can shop small, they prefer to shop small. My husband and I are a perfect example of this. Any opportunity we have to support a local business in our area, whether it's a restaurant, a small business that is just around our home or whatever it is, that's where we always go. But I will tell you the biggest turnoff for us as millennials, and me speaking from all of millennials all around the world, just for clarity's sake here, that's fantastic, is the fact that the hours matter. The hours of your store matter greatly to us. We're both working professionals, and even as we look at boomers, I mean, you really don't work very much, but it's fine. And most other boomers are still working, or they're on this place of retirement. The hours matter. For us to get away in the middle of the day to come shop small is not something that happens very regularly for us. Sure, we can come out at lunch in between meetings or something like that, but it's hard for us to get away until after we pick up the kids at school and then coming back and trying to find it. And so oftentimes if we need something and a small business isn't open, we either have to choose to go to Amazon or a big box store to make those purchases simply because of hours. And so as you're thinking about this changing customer, and what this looks like in the future, I would encourage you to evaluate the hours. They're like, but Sarah, evaluate our hours. We've always been open from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Why would we ever change that? We have these stable, steady customers. They will not be your stable, steady customers forever, right? And so we've got to have a different perspective. We have a few dealers who have started with consumer market, so we're not talking about commercial markets, but the consumer market here, doing hours from 10 till 7 to be able to get some more of the millennials coming into the dealership. Or at least saying, on Tuesday nights, we're going to stay open till 8 o'clock, picking one night a week that you are open a little bit later. And we're going to talk about some other ways that you can make your small business accessible to people who are not able to come in during your normal business hours over the course of this. But it's to see this transition happening, and where millennials and Gen Xers and even this Gen Z that's coming into the market are making different buying decisions.
You know, it's even on a Saturday, because I know a lot of you guys, it's hard enough to staff it just during the week.
Oh my God, absolutely.
Anyway, I know, Marina, you've dealt with that a little bit in your whole thing. But I go back again, so but even on a Saturday, I see a lot of dealers say, well, we're open from 9 to 1 or something like that on a Saturday. And I go, well, think about your millennial customers. They've got kids that are in soccer and baseball and things like this. So in the morning, their morning is consumed, when you're open, their morning is consumed with sports with their kids and doing those things. And that's a very important part of it as they go up. So I tell my dealers, so stop being open from maybe 9 to 1, open up from 11 to 3. Right? Because the millennials, the games are just, the sports are just getting over about 11 or 12. They're going to go out and have lunch someplace with the kids. But if you're open to 3, so you didn't work any more hours, right? You just changed your hours a little bit so it's more reflective of really when the millennials are available to make purchases. Because like Sarah said, they want to make those purchases there, right? But if you're not open and they want something, they have to go someplace else to do it.
So let's talk for just a few minutes about the changing employee and what we're seeing with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of interesting things going on. So Jeff and I did a workshop here not too long ago, one of our dealer success groups, and the whole topic was quiet quitting. How many people are familiar with quiet quitting? So what is quiet quitting? We say quiet quitting. What is that? What is that? It's happening all the time. What is quiet quitting?
Decide to walk away and they're done and never communicated with you.
Oh, even worse than that. They decided to walk away, but they still stay. Right? You know, that's the problem. I wish they would just leave. Right? But they didn't tell you that they were going to quit and have you continue to pay them. They just stay. And so that's what quiet quitting is. Now, it's been around forever. We were laughing when Jeff and I were doing this, and people say, this is a new phenomenon. No, it's not. Quiet quitting's been around forever. How many of you have ever known somebody who was getting close to retirement in their job, and they said, I'm just going to keep my head down till I retire? Quiet quitting, okay? And so I tell people again, everybody acts like this is some new phenomenon. Quiet quitting, they put a term to it, right? But we used to call it, they're just running out the clock. That's what we called it. Quiet quitting was just running out the clock. But we're starting to see this, and again, it's coming out, and people are blaming it on millennials, whatever. And I tell people, you got to quit stereotyping all of this stuff because it's kind of a group of people. People that want to work, and people that really don't want to work do the least amount that they can, to get by. But we have to sit here and understand it. And because of this phenomena, what's starting to happen in the job market?
Well, what we're seeing is that people are on average staying in a job for about 2 years right now. 2 years is the average someone stays at a job. And how many of you say, okay, Sarah, that just doesn't make any sense to me because I have stayed at the same job. I opened this dealership, I've been there for 40 plus years, or I've said, I'm just going to find a job and stay there and make a career out of it. Are you all in this mindset? I think that's where a lot of this space has been. But when we know that on average, employees are only staying at a job for 2 years, it changes how we have to do things inside of our dealership, right? We have to train differently because what it takes to get someone right now proficient in a job is between 12 and 18 months. 12 to 18 months is what it takes to get someone proficient in a job. And if we've got them for 2 years on average, what does that tell us? We've only got 12 months to 6 months of them at their maximum productivity before they leave and go somewhere else. Fantastic. That's fantastic. And so as we think about this, we have to have this conversation about how do we train more efficiently, how do we get them up to speed more efficiently, and what happens if we can find some ways to keep them for an extra year. If you spend 12 to 18 months training this person and you can keep them in for 1 extra year, that pays dividends for you inside of your dealership. But we've got to change this mentality around it. The other thing that we have to do is it requires us to look differently at resumes when they're coming in. Because when you see somebody who's had 8 different jobs over the course of their life, the thing is, that's the norm. That's the norm. You're not going to find somebody who's been somewhere for 20 years and said, I'm ready to spend the next 20 years with you. That's probably not going to happen. I don't mean for this to be a motivational talk. This is like a Debbie Downer situation.
I'm sorry to be done.
All right. Coffee will fix that. All right, so as we walk through it, though, we've got to have a different mindset with that. The other thing we've got to keep in mind with employees is that we have this Gen Z coming into the marketplace looking for jobs right now. Are you guys familiar with Gen Z? Right, they're coming out of college, coming out of high school right now, and there are some basic things that we have to teach Gen Z as they're coming into the workforce that they have never actually learned before that would seem like second nature to you. All right, how many of you have ever had to teach a Gen Zer how to answer a phone and take a message appropriately? Right, listen.
What's that ringing sound? That's a phone.
You gotta answer that. You gotta answer that in the dealership, right? But that's not a skill that they have ever had to learn and utilize. They've never have had to actually pick up a phone when they didn't know who was on the other side and know what questions to ask to take a message, because it's always been right there in front of them. So there are these like skill gaps we're working with these employees as well.
Yes, and so this kind of goes back to where we have an employee that is going to finally achieve the perfect employee in 18 months. So like Sarah said, it takes between 12 and 18 months to take an employee and bring them from no efficiency to perfect efficiency. And they're going to leave in 24. Okay, so you've spent 18 months losing money on this employee, and you're going to make money on them for a few months, and they're going to leave. So what we have to do is, number one, figure out how do we keep them longer, or how do we train them faster? And I tell people that's really what we have to look at, is how do we take an employee, and instead of taking 18 months to get them proficient, how do we do that in 6 months? And I think that's one of the things you're going to have to look at in your business, what your processes look like. When you have a new employee come on at the parts counter, what are you doing at the parts counter to teach them how to sell parts? Not just how to sell them, how to look them up, how to go in and put a new customer in the software, how to do these things. And that's some of the stuff that we're working on, Jeff and I are working on now, and putting it in the toolbox. But how do we train people more quickly so we can get that out of them? And then how do we keep them? Like Sarah said, how do we keep them an extra year? And that really goes back to the interview process when you're interviewing the people. So if you've got somebody that's had 4 jobs over the last 8 years, David, you and I would look at this person like, well, I don't want this person on my team, because David and I, we would have never moved every 2 years for a job. Realize right now, in North America, 67% of the total workforce is moving every 2 years. Every month, 4 million people are never unemployed, they just move to another job. 4 million people a month in North America are just moving from one job to the next job. And when people talk about unemployment, they go, well, I'm trying to find somebody that's unemployed. You don't want people right now that are unemployed. You want to find the person that's jumping. And how do we get that person there, and how do we keep them there?
Well, so as we're looking at this dealership of the future, I think the people aspect of this is a huge piece. Like, that's a huge piece of this. We've got to understand our changing customers and our changing employees. But when we look at the dealership of the future as a whole, I think what we're going to see is this move towards the desire for a frictionless experience. How many of you have ever heard of this small little company right outside of Seattle called Amazon? Anybody familiar with that? Amazon? Okay. How many of you have Amazon packages on your door right now that you saw with your ring
That are
doorbell?
being stolen.
That are being stolen. Okay, all right. All right, yeah, me too. My husband texts me, he's like, what else did you actually order, Sarah? Okay, so that's a whole different conversation. We'll dive into that later. But here's the deal. Amazon has made it so incredibly easy for you to spend money with them. Would you agree? They have figured it out how to take money out of your pocket and put it in their pocket in what seems like no work at all. A few years ago, they had what they called the Amazon Dash button. How many of you have ever seen the Amazon Dash button? They wanted to know how they could actually take something physical inside of your house and make it so that within 2 days you could have exactly what you needed on your doorstep without you even having to touch your cell phone. That's what they wanted to figure out. And so they sent out a huge amount of these little buttons that you put in places that you would normally go inside of your house and run out of supplies that you needed. Toilet paper, they got that. Well, that went away in March of 2020, but that's a different conversation. They had Tide, they had Red Bull, they had coffee, and they had some adult beverages as well, where all you had to do was simply push this button, and within 2 days, on your doorstep, showed up the supply that you needed. It was absolutely wild. They said, how do we reduce this friction and move money from your consumer's pocket to Amazon pocket overnight in a frictionless way? As we look at the dealership of the future, your customers of the future, that is what they expect from you. They expect that every interaction with you is frictionless. And the moment that there's friction, they take a step back and they go, I don't know what's wrong with this company. There's something shady about it. Because Amazon has primed all of us to expect that it is a seamless process every single time. So let's talk about what this looks like with service cloud.
Yeah, so this is where we get into kind of the department part. And as I said before, one of the biggest issues that we have in service is technicians. Would you all agree? Okay, and there's not a big movement right now for a lot of training. Mike Rowe's probably our biggest victor, as you get ready to remember Mike Rowe. So he's out there telling people, we've got to refocus and get the kids that don't want to go to college, just get them in tech school and stuff like that. So, but we're a long way away from that. It takes time to move that arrow. And so what we're seeing, and there's already an automotive company doing this, Audi, is they're using augmented reality. Okay, so you guys have virtual reality where you put a set of glasses on and there's this scene in front of you that's created by a computer. That's virtual reality. So you don't actually see what's in front of you. Augmented reality is I have clear glasses on, but it's also feeding data. It's like in a fighter pilot's helmet, they call it a heads-up display. This is really what this is. And so Google makes these, there's a lot of companies that make these now, but they're actually feeding data into the person looking through this. And so what Audi has done for their technicians is they have everything that you're working on that car. When you look at this computer starts saying, oh, you're looking at the air breather, you're looking at the starter, you're looking at this, and it automatically starts feeding you information on, okay, if you're going to take that starter off, you're going to need a 10 millimeter deep well socket and a 3/8 ratchet to do that with, and it starts feeding you information on what you're going to need to get. And then as you're looking at it and you're starting to do things, it's starting to tell you if you're doing them right or if you're doing them wrong. So it's literally feeding data to the technician as they're doing this job. And we're sitting there saying, okay, this exists already. Okay, so what's going to happen, I believe, is you're going to start, and we already have some manufacturers that are working toward this in the other power world. You're going to start seeing manufacturers take their computer-aided drawings, CAD drawings, okay, which is what they use to build their equipment with. Because this is how this works. So they take these drawings that the engineers built, called CAD drawings, they're feeding them into software, they're converting that into something that's actually 3D, and then they're animating it. And then they're feeding information to the computer that's watching what you're doing with your eyes and is telling it, the computer, are you doing that right or doing it wrong? And it's giving you clues on how to do things and what you're doing. And if it's wrong, it just shows up, there's a little red dot that shows up in these glasses. It's right, it stays green. Right? And then it gives you instructions if a red dot shows up on what to do to turn that dot back to green. So in my mind, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, if I had a low-end parts-changing technician, right? I can find a lot of those. They're not hard to find. It's basically what I would call a servicing tech. Drains the oil, puts the stuff on. Not a high-skill thing. But if I had glasses, if I had a computer feeding this person information, right, that was being driven from the manufacturer into these glasses, and it knows what you're looking at, it knows how you're doing something, and it's feeding you the correct information. I could take a technician that's maybe 60% efficient, and I can make them 100% efficient. Just like that, with a pair of glasses and data feed. And that's going to be coming in this industry. So we have to solve the technician problem. And the technician problem is not going to be solved because we have more bodies. It's going to be because we take the bodies we have and they become more efficient. And we're going to use the computers and we're going to feed that down. We're telling, and Jeff and I, as we're talking to dealers who are building new shops and new businesses, you need to get fiber optics if you can. This is going to take about a 500 meg download speed to make this real time for technicians. But as you're looking at your buildings and you're looking at things like this is where it's going. We're not going to solve it because we find more people. We're going to use technology and take the people we have and make them more effective in what we do from that standpoint. So I really see that moving, and it's already going on right now. But this is something in the next probably 5-6 years that we will see. Now, what's going to change from a manufacturer's perspective? They're going to require you to pay more for training. Because this data, this is not cheap to do. But so what if you had to pay another $2,000 a year for a manufacturer, that's your major manufacturer, for this information to come down there? Would it be worth it? Yeah, you pay for it in like 2 days. Okay, so that's the thing that we see that's going to happen.
The other thing that's really cool with this is it takes all of these people who said, I want to grow up and be a gamer. Do you have those in your family? You have those in your family? Okay, cool, we do too. I want to grow up and be a gamer. And you say, you know what, I've got a really fun game for you. It's called Be a Technician. All right, so we put these glasses on and we turn this into a gamification piece as well. So I think it will become attractive to new technicians coming in because it gives them the step-by-step guides on how to do this.
And the other big change we see is it's moving more to mobile. Now, I know mobile years ago was a thing and it didn't work out very well, but boomers didn't care about mobile, okay? You care about it.
I care about mobile. I think that there's a space that mobile service is going to become the norm again. How many of you are doing mobile service right now inside of your dealership? How many of you have tried mobile service in the past and you said, that was the worst idea I ever had? Anybody have that? Are a few people?
Some of the guys have been doing mobile though.
Yeah, we're like, sir, that was the worst idea I've ever had. Fantastic. Here's the deal. I think this shift to mobile service is going to come and be a big piece as we go into the future. As I'm working with manufacturers, one of the questions that they are constantly asking is, how do we create this end user experience that is seamless for the customer? And I'm seeing them have the conversation with some of their top dealers on what does it look like for you to try mobile again for us, mobile repair. You know, a few years ago, I had a car that I was really struggling to find the right oil filter for. I needed an oil change in my car, and it was just this whole entire saga of trying to find the right oil filter.
Because you bought a BMW.
Because I had
Nobody stops supplies for you.
and so I was going through this process, and it was just terrible. It was so frustrating. Every car dealership I went to said, your car, we don't have the right oil filter in stock, we've got to get it for you. And as I was going through this process, I was just about ready to pull my hair out because I was spending so much time with this. So I downloaded an app on my phone, and within a day, there was a technician at my house doing an oil change with the right oil filter for my car while I played in the backyard with my kids. It was the most incredible experience for me because I didn't have to go anywhere. I didn't have to run around town, and I got to play with my kids because I was willing to trade money for time with my kids. Now, was the oil change for this car double what I would have paid if I walked into a dealership or a Jiffy Lube or wherever it was? Absolutely it was. But was I willing to make that change? Yes. Here's the deal. When we look at this changing customer base that's happening right now, I think we've got to get out of this mentality that the old customer that we have
Thank you.
I'm
going to tell your mother.
you probably already watching. The old customer that we have is the customer that we're going to have in the future, and that we are in this place with our customers right now. They have more knowledge than they've ever had before. But the skill level does not match the knowledge level. And they are willing to pay for your skill so that they can have their problem solved. And so when I look at this mobile space, I think this is what we're going to see in the future. Now, when we talk about that, there's a few things we've got to keep in mind with moving to mobile is, number one, the communication with your customers and making sure we're communicating in an effective way. I know that our friends over at Connect are always doing a good job making sure that you can communicate with your customers. So there's technology that you can use throughout the course of this to do that, making sure we're taking pictures of units before and after, as well as making it easy for them to pay. Your customers in the midst of this mobile service are not going to want to have to pay through calling in, giving you the credit card, making sure that's an easy, seamless process.
Well, and even myself, probably 5 or 6 years ago, my mower, I would have put it on a trailer, loaded it, and take it to a dealer. Because I didn't really care, it was fine. But today, I'm almost 68, I'm going, man, it'd be nice if somebody just did mobile service. Because it doesn't matter to me about the money, I just don't want to screw with it anymore. So just come out, take care of my unit, take care of it here. And I think again, what we have to do is get out of our mindset that it's about the money. It's not about the money, it's about the time. Like Sarah said, so mobile service, I think it was around a long time ago. John Deere was really one that pioneered mobile service with what they were doing. It just didn't work because the client base wasn't right for it yet. I would say again, just because it didn't work here doesn't mean it won't work now. And we're really encouraging all of our dealers to move into it. And we're going to charge a higher fee for it. And we're going to charge mileage for it. I tell people again, so it's not like we do it at the same rate, but I don't expect you to do it at the same rate. I just, be there when you want to be there. Here it is. Here's the key. Or here's the way to get in there and do it, service it. You've got my credit card on file. How many of you already keep people's credit cards on file? All right, if you don't, you should, okay? But they got every bit of information that you just take care of. Just sit there and do it. So I would really encourage you guys, if you have tried mobile service in the past and it didn't work for you, I'd really encourage you to rethink it again. And I know I've got a lot of dealers out there that are doing mobile service. My big ag dealers all do mobile service, right? So I mean, that's the world for them out there as they go through and do it. But it is a big deal. And again, like Sarah said, we have our friends with Connect. Trevor's in here today with us. How many guys are using some sort of a texting platform to communicate with customers out there? So if you're not, I would really encourage you to do that because people, they respond quickly to texts if they like that information from there. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when we think about battery in regards to our service department and what the future is, I think the thing that we're seeing is typically when we start the conversation about battery and outdoor power equipment, everyone goes, no, Sarah, gas is never going to go away. And you're right. Gas is never going to go away in the foreseeable future when we look at this. But what I do think is that there's going to be a bigger and bigger market for the battery product. And when we think about who we need as technicians for a battery product, it requires a less skilled technician inside of our service department. And how many of you would be thrilled to have to start searching for a less skilled technician than what you currently have to search for right now? Would that change things dramatically when we're thinking about this time to get them trained on the product that you're servicing? Absolutely. Again, if we know that we only have have 2 years on average with this. If the quicker we can get them up and going, the better. And so when we look at this battery product, and again, if you have been out on the show floor, you will know that the battery product out there is not cheap, disposable products anymore. Have you noticed that? You ask any of the pricing on that, you're like, holy smokes. Sure, my kids would like this instead of college. That'd be fantastic. Okay? But there's like this shift happening. So we're not talking about the stuff that they're getting at Home Depot or Lowe's that's just throwaway product. We're looking at high-end product that they are going to keep up, maintain, and make sure that we have the right parts for it. But we see a lot of this coming from the golf car space. We have a few manufacturers and dealers we work with in the golf car space. And what we see is that the thing is, with battery product, we are not repairing as much as we are just replacing components. Right? So it's not this push towards repair, it's replace components. And most of the components with golf cars, and what I'm going to expect to see over the next few years in the outdoor power space, is the fact these components are only going to be able to be purchased and installed through servicing dealers. Cha-ching, let's go, right? Let's go. It takes a less skilled technician to replace versus repair.
Yeah, because when you look at the battery, the battery is basically the engine. But that engine has to have a carburation system on. How do we take this energy and how do we flow it to the right place, which in the world of batteries is a controller. And in golf cars, we do a lot with Yamaha golf cars, and they have gas cars and they have electric cars. I always laugh because I said, what percentage of the golf courses, and the group that we work with, they rent at least 8,000 golf cars to golf courses, 8,000. Okay, and of those 8,000, probably 7,000 are gas. So why do they use gas golf cars on golf courses? Because it's more what? Reliable. They have batteries there, but batteries again are expensive. You have to be replaced on a pretty regular basis in golf cars. But there's a controller, if it's electric, that runs it, okay? And the controller, Yamaha makes these, this is the manufacturer, and that controller can only be bought from Amazon? No, it only can be bought from who? A dealer, okay? And you could buy it, but you still can't put it on yourself because it has to be programmed specific to that car. And that's what we're hoping that manufacturers in the battery world do, is say, look, every battery product has a controller, something that's regulating that flow of energy to those motors or whatever. So that controller is the heart of it, and so build it so that you can only get that controller through a certified dealer, and that there has to be a program that has to be used to program that controller to that specific thing. There's going to be a fortune in battery, and I think that manufacturers will continue to see that. We're preaching that to them right now. Think about it from this perspective, because you've got to have somebody service it. Everything that's electric still has moving parts on it, right? You have a motor there instead of a spindle, but that motor's going to go bad, heat, overheat, grass, and stuff like this. So there's still going to be plenty of opportunities there. But I tell people again, I think a lot of people are looking at batteries going like, it's going to be the death of the service department. One of the companies out there, they have a charging unit that's $10,000 to charge the batteries for their commercial units. That thing, they're not going to throw that away if it goes down. We're going to need to have the ability to do what? Bring it into our service department and repair it. So like Sarah said, it's going to take a different type of tech. But again, they won't have to troubleshoot it. You'll just plug a computer into it, and the computer will tell you this is what you're going to need to replace. And we're not going to be replacing that stuff for $100 an hour. It's going to be $300-400 hour types of stuff we're going to be charging for this. So I see batteries being a big boost to the outdoor power world. I just do. I think, again, we're seeing the infant stages of it, but it's going to continue to evolve. And like Sarah said, none of the really good stuff is cheap. They're not going to throw this stuff away. They're going to have to work on it.
Yeah. So let's talk about the parts department of the future and some of the things we're seeing with parts departments as we go into the future. I think one of the things that we're seeing is that this movement towards 3D printing is going to become more and more prominent inside of your parts department. We think you're going to start 3D printing your slower moving parts. Why in the world, Bob, would 3D print our slowly moving parts versus our fast moving parts in the parts department?
This is something that I think probably over the next 4 or 5 years you're going to see parts departments are going to cut their parts inventory about in half. Think about all the parts that you sell that you may only sell 3 or 4 times a year. Okay, and so why would we keep it in stock if we could take a 3D printer and just have it printed for us in 2 hours? Right, so I tell people, you're going to see that. And so what you're going to do, you're going to see manufacturers, and I already talked to a couple manufacturers, they're already looking at this. You're going to see manufacturers are going to lease you a 3D printer. There's a company right now that's printing a car using a 3D printer. Okay, so you think about it, it's not plastic, it's metal, hard valves. I mean, the 3D printing is the future of everything. And so you're going to see that in a parts department. So you'll have this printer from XYZ manufacturer. and you'll say, I need this, Marie, you say, I'll need this part, I need this part, we only sell it 3 times a year, why would I want to stock it? You'll just download the file from the manufacturer for that part. They will charge you what they would charge you to have the part in stock. So you're not going to be any cheaper. But they've also supplied you the correct metal. So you're going to put this metal spool on. That you're going to print this, because there's all different types of metals that these printers use. You put the right metal spool on, so you'll have rolls of metal there, and then you'll click the button and you'll print the part and tell the customer if you'll come back in an hour, I'll have the part ready for it. Or for the service part. You won't see it with fast moving parts because it doesn't make sense to do it with that. But all your slower moving stuff, if you got parts that move really quick, you're still going to have an inventory. But what would it mean to you as a dealer to cut your parts inventory in half? And have it on demand for a customer when they walk in. Call in on the website, this is what I need, come back in, come in 2 hours and I'll have it. It'll be nice, warm, and hot right off the press. Good. So I really see that happening in the very near future from that. And again, you won't buy the printers, they're pretty expensive. They're getting less and less like everything else. But you will see that, I would say, I would be shocked if you don't see that in the next 3 or 4 years. With some of your bigger manufacturers making that available. And then I tell people, think of the money it would save you with your parts department, how much easier it would be. You just take your stuff that you only sell 3 or 4 times a year, I'll just print it for you. You sell 50 of them, you're going to buy it and keep it in stock. But it's the slower stuff that you would, or maybe I only sell it once a year. It doesn't matter to you because I've got a spool of metal back there. If I only sell one a year, I'll just download the file from the manufacturer, they'll plug it in, it'll print it, and then we're good to go. So.
And what does that do for the service department? When you have the parts that you need when they need it, I mean, you can continue to push that profitability for the service department.
I think, Jeff, I forget what car manufacturers currently 3D printing pistons. Okay. Because it's all about the metals.
Absolutely.
And it does it molecule by molecule quickly.
How about teaching our customers make more of the syrup?
Well, that'll never happen, David. As they say, oh, it's a Briggs engine, they're all the same, that's great, I'll print a couple of parts here for you, let me know how that works. Yeah, exactly.
That's right, it all works the same, it all works the same. And the other things that we're seeing is I think that we're going to see parts delivery by drones will become the preferred way for people to get their parts. You know, this is one of those things that we are seeing manufacturers currently doing, using this technology. Everywhere we look, there are these drones happening inside it. They have the drone pilot training happening right now as well, just down the hall. I think this is a space that we're going to continue to see evolving. We have again another manufacturer who's already doing this for their dealerships. They give everyone who buys a high quantity of parts, typically it's a big ag manufacturer, they give their farmers a drone pad that they keep in their tractors, and if they have an issue with their parts, something breaks down while they're in the field, all they have to do is call the dealership, they have a drone, and they fly the drone with the part to the farmer in the field. This is already happening. All right, these are not cheap drones either, to be clear. When we're looking at these drones, I mean, we're talking about $60,000 to $80,000 drones that the manufacturer is either providing for the dealers or they're leasing to the dealers. So these are not cheap things, but I think that brings another really important part, is that in your service department, if I were in your shoes today and I was trying to prepare for the future in regards to the drone technology that's there, there's 2 things I would do. Number 1, is I would start having conversations with some drone manufacturers about what it looks like to start leasing drones out of your dealership, okay? Because as we look at even the landscapers and some of the people who have small acreages, they want to lease these drones to be able to look at their property and use them. The second thing I would have the conversation about is saying, what does it look like to get on the repair list as a servicing dealer for some of these drone technologies? Because if you're spending $80,000 on a drone, how are you going to just like throw it away when it stops working? Oh, heck no. There is no way in the world you would just throw that away.
No, and that's the thing. Like I said, we do have a manufacturer right now. They're manufacturing construction equipment. So if I got an excavator on a job site that's 2 hours away from my dealership and they have a hydraulic hose brake, right, they're down. Okay, I need that. And I got 4 guys standing there waiting for that excavator to keep going. They're able to literally say, okay, this is the hose you need. They put it to the drone, the guy lays the pad down, the drone flies it, drops that hose off on that pad, and flies back to the parts department. This is already happening. And like I said, these are $80,000 drones, right? But why not us service $80,000 drones? I see guys out there doing photography that's got $20,000 drones with these high-resolution cameras on them. They're great. Everything breaks. So I'm telling my dealership, why aren't we starting to look at doing drone service, doing drone repair, maybe selling drones, renting drones? Right, things like that. It's just the future out there. It's happening right now. These are not $300 Amazon drones. Okay, these are very expensive. Farmers are buying these. Right? right? So they're doing all their fields and stuff like this, because everything up today is about precision planting. I don't want to waste any chemical, any seed anywhere, and they're having drones map out everything on it. And farmers are buying $80,000 drones to manage their properties and things. So this, to me, is a great opportunity for us in the future.
The last thing I want to talk about with this parts department in the future that is a really applicable thing you can do right now is that customers will expect a different way to pick up their parts. How many of you, when you've been walking around, have seen those Amazon lockers where they deliver your Amazon purchases into one centralized location? Have you guys seen those around or heard about those? I would encourage you to start thinking about a solution like that for your parts, so that when a customer needs to buy a part from you, and they are not available during your normal hours, you have something outside of your dealership that they simply can put in a code, get their parts, and move on their merry way. We have a number of dealerships outside of the Chicagoland area doing this, and it's been incredibly effective for them because they have them either text in the parts order or call in what they need, or even FaceTime with a parts person to make sure that they're getting the right part. And they say, okay, let us charge your credit card on file because that's that frictionless part. We'll get that credit card on file charged, and then they put the part out there, and then overnight or whenever they have the time, they come out there and get it. Landscapers also love this because if they need a part, it's there when they can get to it, and then that way in the morning before they start the job, their stuff is repaired and they're ready to go. So that's something that's really applicable you can start doing right now. I have done the research on these cabinets that you can put outside of your dealership are probably between $3,000 to $5,000, so they are an investment. But this is going to really meet your customers where they're at as we're looking at doing this. And what kind of money are you saving by not having a parts person that you have to pay a salary for be there all the time when you're ready to meet your customer? It's substantial. So that's one of the things we've got to think about with parts. So let's talk about the sales department of the future.
So the key in the future is it's not who was the last person to touch the customer that gets the sale, it's the first person. You know, so it used to be kind of the thing, well, whoever the last person they went to was going to get the sale. That's totally changed. And I see that changing even more. It's that person that has that first interaction, you know, that the person they first touch, because most of the people don't want to keep looking around for different things. They just want to do what? Find a solution and what? And do it. Okay, it's not, I don't spend time doing it because what's my big valuable thing? If you're a boomer or millennial, what's your valuable thing? It's time, it's not the money. And so what I want to do is be able to go to, interact with you in some way, make the transaction happen, right? And then move on from that. So I think that's going to be a thing because we have to be ready when the customer's ready. And where does the customer do most of their shopping in the beginning? For even your dealership, where's that happening? Online. They're going to your website, and then you have to go back and you have to look at the website part.
Right. Well, when we think about the website, I want you to start thinking about your website not as an informational brochure, which is probably what most of your websites are right now, but as the best salesperson you have in your dealership. Because that journey that a customer goes through, most customers right now are comfortable spending money in big amounts on a website. I mean, people are buying cars online without ever seeing them in person. What makes you think someone wouldn't be comfortable if they bought a car for $30,000 or $40,000 online, not comfortable spending $10,000 on a zero-turn mower online as well? And so we've got to kind of move around this mentality as we are looking at these changing customers yet again and say, how do we help our website become the most valuable salesperson on our team? And as we think about this as well, there's a few things we've got to make sure that are happening. Number one, we've got to keep it frictionless. And you're like, Sarah, would you stop talking about that? But here's the deal. That's the cornerstone to this. They want to be easy to spend money with you. Number two, they still want to have a connection to a live human being. Okay, I think that's the second thing we've got to keep in mind. It's not that they don't want this connection. They want to have a connection to a human being, but it just looks different than what we've done in the past. So that's the second thing. And third, make it easy for them to pick up the product. We were joking as we were looking through this morning, talking about all of these spaces that it's become so incredibly easy to buy something online and not have to walk in the store to get it. My husband said the best two things that came out of 2020 was the ability to pick up your groceries without having to talk to a single soul and asking people to mute themselves. Okay, that's what he said the best two things that came out of 2020 were. And so when we think about it, the amount of times that we need to order food online or we need to get something from a restaurant or a product from Target and you don't want to drag your 73 children in there. I have 3, which feels like 73. And so whatever that is, like that is a huge piece, but we've we've got to think differently about our website and say, this is not just a brochure we have online, but instead is an incredible sales tool that we have integrated.
Well, and this goes back again, you talk about people buying a car, and people say, why would anybody buy a car without seeing it? Well, because they went to see reviews.
Yeah.
And I think this is the other thing that I'm really trying to get people to understand. Your review, your digital presence out there, that's the thing. If you're getting 4, 4.5, 5-star reviews, you're safe. They trust you, right?
Absolutely.
Because 100 other people trust you too. So the decision, do I trust you or not, is gone. I trust you because 100 other anonymous people trust you. Therefore, I'll spend my money with you. And I think that's the other piece, is as you look at your digital presence, how many of you are really focused on making sure you've got good customer reviews online, digital presence? And if you're not, boy, you've got to get on that. Right? You've got to really get focused on that as a part of that too.
So finally, we've got to make sure that in the sales department of the future that your showroom experience is on point. Now you go, Sarah, that's great. I love the idea that our showroom experience needs to be better than ever, and it creates this what we call congruency, that the experience they have online is the same kind of experience they're going to have in your store. But how do I do that? Listen, I'm going to give you all some homework today. Okay, you're like, Sarah, we did not come here for homework. We're not really interested in that. I don't care. This is what we're doing. All right, so I'm going to give you some homework today. Today, I want you to go walk around the show floor and walk outside to the displays. And I want you to see if there's anything that just catches your eye on how it is showcased. We walked around just a little bit yesterday, and there were these moments where we're like, holy smokes, that's cool. Like, that's cool. How they showed that was so cool. The manufacturers that you represent have spent a lot of time, money, and energy to put together these beautiful displays in this place today. And I want you to go ask them and say, hey, we're working on showcasing in our dealership. We're trying to make our showroom incredible. Can we duplicate this display manufacturer that I represent inside of our showroom? They would probably start jumping up and down with glee when you go ask them that question, but they've got it figured out. Let's tap into what they're doing with that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we went by one specifically, it was the mower, and I'm going like, that is so cool. You know, and I'm sitting there thinking in my mind, what would happen if a dealer had that? And it was a mower that was set up in front of a fake scene, but you had the augmented glasses on, and you can actually get on the mower, and it would make you feel like you were using the mower. That's out there, and I'm with Sarah. I think you guys really, when you're on the show floor, look at the cool stuff out there. But look at how they're displaying it, how they're showcasing it. And if it's your manufacturer, like Sarah said, they would die if you walked up and said, hey, how can I do this in my showroom? I got to get a smaller version in my showroom. They would fall over themselves to help you do that. But I think there's so many really cool things out there.
Yeah, so finally, let's talk about the technology that's changing this communication back and forth.
Well, again, because we have our friends Connect in here, and this is unplanned. We love Connect if you're not using them as a texting. And a lot of your other software will do texting too. But one of the things that we're telling people again is people don't want to have a conversation when you text them. You know, on the average, and Trevor, I'm going to pull you up on this, is it 3 minutes the average person responds to a text?
Yes, 95% of the time.
95% of the time, in 3 minutes, people respond to a text. If you call them on the phone, honestly, if you call me on my cell phone right now and your name doesn't show up on the number, I don't answer. I get so many spam calls on my cell phone anymore. So I tell people again, texting is the future. It is where it's at. You know, and so you really have to embrace that. You're texting your customers. You know, your customers are texting you, and really using that technology to harness it, because it just saves time, and customers prefer it.
Well, and I think too, the thing is that the amount of money that you can generate in your service department and the amount of headache that you can reduce in the service department by texting your service customers is well worth it all in the end. How many of you would love to have a service customer reach back out and respond to something that you have said to them within 3 minutes? What would that do for your service department flow and your service department process if within 3 minutes you text a customer about a problem or issue that came up with their unit and they said, go ahead? The other thing that happens with this is that when we start texting and having this communications via text message, we have written proof that they have approved an order. How many of you have ever had an order in your service department and you said, well, I talked to them on the phone, they said, go ahead with this repair, and then they came back and said, I never approved that. Anybody ever do that? If you don't have the written signature or digital signature on file of them approving it, they are not liable to pay for the repair in most states. And so we've got to be sure we're keeping track of that. So even just in that, the technology is creating a frictionless or seamless experience.
Absolutely. So again, I would encourage you without doing it. The last thing here real quick as we wrap up, and Sarah and I were talking about this, I said the biggest thing that we have to do is we have to become comfortable being uncomfortable. You know, when I train salespeople, I tell people great salespeople are great salespeople because they're comfortable being uncomfortable. You go into new situations with people you don't know. I don't care who you are, it's a little bit uncomfortable, but you have to control that. And the challenge most people have is they say, but Bob, I'm comfortable here. Well, here's not where you're trying to get to. Right? Here's where you're trying to get to. Sure, you're comfortable here, but things are changing quickly around you, and you have to change your need to be comfortable. You're going to be in retailing like you guys are in the future. You're going to be constantly pushed in situations that make you a little bit what? Uncomfortable. How do we become uncomfortable? How do we become comfortable being uncomfortable? Anybody know the answer to that? How do you become comfortable
Drink a lot.
being uncomfortable? Which is why we have the Amazon button for bourbon. Right here. You push that button, next thing you know, bourbon there. I'm going to give you a little exercise real quick. Everybody do me a favor. Clasp your hands together like this. Then we'll wrap up and what you got here. Put your hands together. Just clasp them together. Okay? Now, I didn't tell you how to do it. You just did it. This is the way you would always do it. How does that feel? Well, it should feel comfortable because this is how you always do it. Everybody do me a favor. Move your fingers over just one digit. So take them, unclasp them, move over here. Some of you guys are struggling with we were here, now we're here, okay? How's that feel? A little bit awkward, doesn't it? It just feels a little awkward, okay? Now go back, okay? And now it feels comfortable again. Now go this way again, okay? And does it feel a little less uncomfortable? Go back again. I tell people, how do you become comfortable being uncomfortable is you spend a lot of time being uncomfortable and you just start to get comfortable with it. Cross your arms for me real quick. Okay, I didn't tell you how to do that. You just did it. Now uncross them and recross them so they're just out of the Some of you are going, okay, Bob, I had this one. You got me here. I'm struggling a little bit here. I didn't tell you how to do it, but all of a sudden you did what? You're here. It's like, okay, now I got to go here. I've done this 1,000 times, so I can kind of do it either way. But I tell people again, the first time you do it, it's a little awkward because this is not how you do it. But if you did it enough times back and forth, pretty soon you just, what? What was uncomfortable becomes what? Comfortable. Comfortable. And I think that's really what Sarah and I want to get across. The future is changing. I think it's going to be great. I think we're in an industry that is just going to continue to get better and better and better. I'm excited about this industry. I've been doing this a long time, and I'm more excited today than I've ever been about this industry. But again, you guys didn't have to learn to adapt to it, be looking to the future.
Yeah, and I would just encourage you, as we're thinking about this, remember, we are not trying to sit here and be on the roller coaster ride, but what we're moving towards is the carousel. Sure, you can adjust the speed of the carousel. Sure, maybe you're in a place you could add another carousel. But what we're trying to do is move our businesses to the place where we are profitable and consistent in everything we